Picture this. It's 40,000 years ago, and you're not running from a saber-toothed cat. You're not starving. You're lying on a soft pile of animal skins, full belly, watching the fire crack and spit, while somebody nearby plays a flute carved out of a bird bone. And here's the part that's gonna mess with your head. You've already done your work for the day. All of it, by lunchtime. That's the truth about Stone Age life that nobody ever told you. And yeah, it basically flips everything you thought you knew right on its skull. Okay, so before we go any further, if this kind of thing scratches your brain in the right way, hit subscribe. We post these every single week. You can even smash that little bell if you want to get reminded. Cool? Cool. Now, let me actually break this down for you, because the version of prehistory you got fed in school is, no joke, mostly garbage. You grew up with one image, right? The caveman, hunched over, grunting, dragging a club, fur on his shoulder, perpetually one bad afternoon away from getting eaten. Life was nasty, brutish, and short. That's the phrase everybody loves to throw around. Every day was a desperate scramble just to not die. You'd call that the obvious truth, the common sense version, the thing everybody knows. And you wouldn't be alone in thinking it. But unfortunately, you'd be wrong. Like deeply, almost embarrassingly wrong. Because when anthropologists actually went out and studied hunter-gatherer societies, when they sat down and timed how people spent their days, the numbers came back looking nothing like the cartoon. Let me explain. The hunter-gatherers, the ones living the way humans lived for the overwhelming majority of our existence, they spent somewhere between 4 and 6 hours a day on the actual business of survival. 4 to 6 hours, that's it. Finding food, gathering it, hunting when they hunted, fixing tools, keeping the fire going, the basic logistics of staying alive. And then, the rest of the day was theirs. Resting, talking, playing games, telling stories, sitting around doing functionally nothing, which, let's be honest, sounds incredible. Add it all up across a week, and these people, the supposed primitive savages you were taught to pity, they had more genuine free time in a single week than you scraped together in an entire month. Read that again. A week of theirs beat a month of yours. And here's the crazy part. You, with your dishwasher and your microwave and your car and your grocery store stocked with 40,000 items, you are working more than they did. You're commuting. You're answering emails at 9 at night. You're glued to a screen that pings at you until you fall asleep. We invented all this technology specifically to free ourselves up, and somehow we ended up with less actual downtime than a person who slept on a cave floor. Which just goes to show, progress doesn't always move in the direction you assume it does. So where does this idea even come from? It's not just somebody's wishful thinking. Anthropologists studied groups like the Sand People in the Kalahari, foraging societies that were still living something close to the old way well into the modern era. They watched, they measured, and the picture that emerged was of people who had cracked a code we completely lost. They worked enough to live well, and then they stopped. They didn't grind themselves into dust chasing more, because more, in their world, didn't really mean anything. You can't stockpile a pile of dead antelope. It rots. So, once your needs were met, the smartest, most rational thing to do was, basically, relax, hang out, be a person. Now, I know what's happening in your head right now. You're thinking, okay, sure, free time, but they were still living on the edge, right? One bad week and the whole tribe is done for. Constant fear, constant hunger. And I get why you'd think that, but let me hit you with the thing that really turns the whole picture upside down, because this one genuinely surprised the researchers too. The hunting. The whole identity of these people in your imagination is built around the hunt. Man the hunter. Spears, mammoths, big dramatic kills. That's the brand. That's what we slapped on them. But here's the reality. and it's wild. Hunting was not the main event. Hunting was, more often than not, a side gig. Where did most of their calories actually come from? Gathering. Roots, berries, nuts, seeds, tubers, fruit, greens, the stuff you walk past in a forest without a second glance. 60 to 80% of the calories these people ate came from gathering, not from running down some beast with a pointy stick. Let that sink in for a second. 60 to 80%. The majority of the food, the actual bread and butter of survival, came from people, often the women, but not only the women, walking out and collecting plants. Steady, reliable, predictable. You go out, you know where the good patch is, you fill your bag, you come home. Nobody's life is on the line. Nobody's bleeding. It just works, day after day after day. And the hunting? The hunting was rare. That's the part nobody tells you. A successful hunt, an actual kill that fed everybody, that might happen once every few days. Sometimes once every few weeks. It wasn't a daily reliable food source. It was more like, okay, this is the special occasion. The jackpot. When it happened, sure, it was a huge deal. Lots of meat, a feast, everybody eating well, fat and protein for days. But you could not build your survival on something that unreliable. So you didn't. You built it on the boring, steady, beautiful certainty of gathering, and the hunt was the bonus round. This flips the whole gender story too, by the way. The image of the brave male hunter bringing home the food while everyone depends on him? Turns out, the people quietly keeping everyone alive day in and day out were just as often the gatherers, doing unglamorous, essential, dependable work. The hunt got the glory and the cave paintings. The gathering got the job done. And that's a pattern that, honestly, hasn't changed all that much in 40,000 years, has it? Now, I don't want you to think hunting was nothing, because when it did happen, the way they did it is one of the most insane things about the human body, and it's a thing you can still kind of do today. Let me tell you about how a human being who is slow, who has no claws, who has no fangs, who can't even run that fast, manages to kill an animal that is faster and stronger in basically every way. Picture this. You're out on the open plain. It's hot, like brutally hot, the kind of heat that shimmers off the ground. And there's an antelope, maybe a kudu, standing a couple hundred meters off. Now, if you tried to sprint at it, it would be gone before you took your third step. An antelope can hit speeds that make you look like you're standing still. You, a human, you top out around 15 miles an hour on a good day, and only for a few seconds. That antelope, it can do 50 miles an hour. In a sprint, you lose. You lose embarrassingly. It's not even a contest. So how does a person who maxes out at 15 ever catch something that does 50? Here's the secret, and it's the thing that makes humans genuinely freaky as a species. You don't beat it in the sprint, you beat it in the marathon. You start walking toward it, and jogging, and it bolts. Easy. It runs off, gets a couple hundred meters away, and stops. Because here's the thing the antelope doesn't know. It doesn't have a plan for what you're about to do. You just keep coming. You jog up to it again. It bolts again, and again you keep coming. And this goes on for hours. 5 hours. That's how long a persistence hunt can take. 5 hours of you, slowly, relentlessly, walking and jogging across the savannah in the blazing midday heat, never sprinting, never giving up, just always closing the distance back up every single time the animal flees. And the whole time, something is happening to that antelope that is not happening to you. It's cooking. It's literally overheating from the inside. Because here's the genius of the human body. You sweat. Millions of sweat glands all over your bare skin, dumping heat, keeping your core temperature down while you move. The antelope can't do that. It pants, it has a thick coat, and when it sprints in that heat over and over, it builds up heat with nowhere for that heat to go. So after a few hours of this, the animal starts to fall apart. It can't sprint as far anymore. Its bursts get shorter, then shorter. It's staggering. Its body temperature climbs past the point of no return. And eventually, it just collapses. Overheated. Done. It didn't get stabbed. It didn't get run down by sheer speed. It got out-endured by a sweaty, patient, two-legged creature who simply refused to stop walking toward it. And that is how you, a slow, soft, clawless human, kill a creature that can run more than 3 times your top speed. You don't win the race, you win the war of attrition. You are, without exaggeration, one of the best long-distance, heat-tolerant endurance machines that evolution has ever produced. We just forgot, because most of us drive everywhere now. And here's the thing about that whole strategy. It tells you something deep about these people. It tells you they were patient. Calculating. They understood their own bodies and the bodies of their prey at a level that's honestly humbling. They knew that their one superpower wasn't strength or speed. It was stubbornness plus sweat. And they built an entire hunting technique around exploiting it. That's not a grunting brute. That's a strategist. Okay, so now I want to take you somewhere darker, somewhere colder. Because the survival stuff, the food, the hunting, that's only the surface. That's the part you can measure with a stopwatch. But the real shock, the thing that should genuinely change how you see these people, is what they did when they didn't have to do anything. What they did with all that free time, all that surplus, all that energy that wasn't going into staying alive. And that's where it gets beautiful and weird and a little bit haunting. Let me take you underground, deep underground. Imagine you're in a cave in what's now France or Spain. And I don't mean a cozy little overhang near the entrance where the light comes in and you can keep your fire. I mean you're crawling, on your belly, through tunnels so tight your shoulders scrape both walls. In total, absolute, suffocating darkness. The kind of black where your eyes never adjust because there is simply zero light to work with. You've got a little stone lamp burning animal fat, a tiny flickering flame, and that's the only thing between you and being completely swallowed by the earth. You crawl for hundreds of meters, hundreds, through passages that twist and drop and squeeze, and then you get to a chamber deep in the guts of the mountain, and you raise your little flame, and there on the wall is a painting. A horse, a bison, a herd of animals mid-gallop, drawn with a confidence and a beauty that would make a modern artist jealous. Layered, shaded, full of motion and life, some of the most breathtaking art human beings have ever produced. And it's here, buried, hundreds of meters underground, in the dark, in a place that takes serious effort and serious nerve to even reach. And here's the question that haunts the archaeologists, the one that I want you to actually sit with for a second. Why? Why would you put your greatest art in a place where almost nobody will ever see it? Think about it. We make art to be seen, right? You hang it on a wall. You put it where people walk by. The whole point is the audience. But these paintings, the deepest and often the most stunning ones, were placed where no one could casually look at them. Not visitors, not the rest of the tribe, not your kids. Nobody, except maybe the handful of people who made them, and maybe not even them again. You'd crawl through hell, paint a masterpiece, crawl back out, and leave it there in the dark forever. So what was it for? And this is where you stop seeing them as primitive and start seeing them as something else entirely, something that makes the hair on your arms stand up. The leading idea is that this wasn't decoration. It was sacred, spiritual. These deep chambers weren't galleries, they were something closer to temples or doorways. The act of going down there, into the dark, into the belly of the earth, alone with your tiny flame, that was the ritual. The painting wasn't for human eyes at all. It was for something beyond. The animals on the wall, maybe they were prayers, maybe they were spirits. Maybe the cave wall itself was understood as a membrane between this world and another one. and painting on it was a way of reaching through. We don't fully know. We may never fully know. But what we do know is that people 40,000 years ago looked at the world and saw more than just food and danger. They saw meaning, mystery, something behind the surface of things worth crawling into the dark to touch. And that, right there, that breaks the caveman myth into 1,000 pieces. A creature fighting every second for survival does not crawl half a kilometer underground to paint a horse it'll never look at again. Only a being with imagination does that. Only a being with a soul, or at least the question of one, does that. Now, speaking of meaning, let's talk about death. Because how a people treat their dead tells you almost everything about how they understand life. And what these people did with their dead is, frankly, gorgeous. And it shatters the idea that early humans saw death as just nothing, an off switch, a body that stops moving and gets left behind. They buried their dead, on purpose, with care, with ritual. And the details, oh, the details will get you. Picture a grave from this era. The body isn't just dumped in a hole, it's been arranged. Often it's laid in a fetal position, curled up, knees toward the chest, like someone sleeping, or like someone waiting to be born again. Think about that choice for a second. The position of birth chosen for the dead. That's not an accident, that's a statement. And then there's the ochre. Red ochre, a natural pigment ground up and sprinkled over the body, sometimes so heavily that the bones underneath are stained red thousands of years later. Red, the color of blood, the color of life. Imagine the symbolism. You cover your dead in the color of life itself, like you're trying to give it back to them, or keep it with them on whatever journey you believe they're taking. People didn't do that by accident. They did it because it meant something. And it doesn't stop there. They buried people with things, tools, beads, carefully made objects, necklaces of shell and bone that took countless hours to drill and string. They put these in the grave with the dead. Now, why would you do that? Why would you take a beautiful, useful, hard-won object and bury it in the ground where it does no living person any good? Because you believed the dead person still needed it, still was somewhere. Going somewhere. You don't pack a bag for someone who's just gone. You pack a bag for someone going on a journey. And at some of these sites, there's even evidence, debated but evidence, of flowers, pollen clustered in the grave in a way that suggests blooms were laid with the body. Flowers for the dead, 40,000 years ago. The same gesture you'd make at a funeral today, the exact same instinct, reaching back across an unimaginable gulf of time. Do you feel that? That's the moment the distance collapses. That's the moment you realize these weren't primitive others, they were us. Fully us. People who loved each other, who grieved, who looked at a dead friend or a dead child and could not, would not, accept that this was simply the end. So they curled the body like a sleeping baby, painted it the color of blood and life, gave it tools for the road, and maybe, just maybe, laid flowers on top. Death, to them, was not nothing. Death was a door. And that belief, that refusal, is one of the most profoundly human things we've ever found in the dirt. Now let's get into something that I think gets wildly underrated, and that's just how much these people knew, like raw knowledge. Because they didn't have books, they didn't have writing, they didn't have a school or a library or a phone to look things up on. Every single thing they knew, they carried in their heads, and the amount they had to carry is staggering. Here's a number for you. A typical hunter-gatherer knew, by heart, 200 to 300 species of plants. 200 to 300. And not just, oh, that's a plant. I mean deep, working knowledge of each one. Which ones you can eat, which ones will heal you, lower a fever, close a wound, settle a stomach, ease a pain. Which ones will straight up kill you. Which part of the plant is good and which part is poison. What season it's safe and what season it's deadly. how to prepare it so it doesn't hurt you, where it grows, when it fruits, all of it. For hundreds of plants, held in memory with no backup, no notes, nothing but the human brain and the spoken word passing it down generation to generation. And here's the part that should make your palms sweat a little. The margin for error was basically zero. Let me explain just how fine the line was. Imagine two plants that look almost identical. Same green leaves, same general shape, same size. One feeds you, one murders you. And the only difference, the only tell between dinner and death, might be something absurdly subtle. The number of veins running through the leaf. 3 veins instead of 5. That's it. That's the whole difference between a meal and a corpse. Get it wrong, miscount, grab the wrong one in a hurry, and you're dead. Or your kid is dead. So these people developed an eye for detail, a botanical precision that most of us today couldn't dream of matching. You probably can't reliably tell apart 3 plants in your own backyard. They could distinguish hundreds, down to the vein count, because their lives literally depended on it. That's not primitive. That's a PhD's worth of pharmacology and botany running in the head of every competent adult, transmitted with perfect care because a single mistake in the lesson could end a bloodline. When an elder who knew the plants died, it was like a whole library burning down. Every one of those people was a living, walking encyclopedia, and they had to be, because forgetting wasn't an inconvenience, forgetting was fatal. Now, I want to come back around to art, because there's a specific kind of object from this period that's one of the strangest and most beautiful little mysteries in all of human history. And once you hear the theory behind it, you're never going to look at it the same way again. I'm talking about the Venus figurines. Here's what they are. All across this period, people carved little statuettes of women, small enough to hold in your hand, made of stone, of bone, of mammoth ivory, of fired clay. And these figurines have a very particular style. Full bodies, heavy breasts, round bellies, wide hips, exaggerated, emphasized. And here's the strange part, the faces. Often, there's no face at all, just a blank, or a head turned down, no features, no eyes, nothing. The body is detailed and powerful, and the face is just absent. Now here's what'll really get you. These figurines aren't found in just one little spot. They're found across an enormous span of the ancient world, from France all the way across Europe into Russia, all the way out to Siberia, thousands of kilometers apart. And they share the same style, the same emphasis, the same proportions, the same vibe. Different places, different millennia in some cases, and yet the same artistic idea echoing across a continent. That's a shared culture, a shared symbol, a shared something stretching across distances that those people, on foot, would have taken lifetimes to cross. The whole thing points to ideas and images traveling, person to person, group to group, like a thread pulled taut from the Atlantic coast to the heart of Asia. So for the longest time, people assumed these figurines were carved by men. Idealized women, fertility goddesses, that kind of thing. The default assumption. Some guy carving his idea of a woman. But there's a newer theory, and it is so simple and so striking that once you hear it, you can't unhear it. Here it is. What if the reason the breasts and the belly and the hips are exaggerated and the face is missing is because these are self-portraits? What if a woman, a pregnant woman, carved her own body, but she carved it from the only angle she could actually see it, looking down at herself? Think about it. Look down at your own body right now. What do you see? You see your chest, foreshortened and looming large from that angle. You see your belly, big, right there in front. You see your thighs and hips spreading out below. And what do you not see? Your own face. You can't see your face. So a woman carving what she saw, looking down at her own pregnant body, would carve exactly this. Big breasts up top because they're closest to your eyes. A big round belly because it's right there. Wide hips and thighs below. And no face because she literally could not see it. The proportions that we always thought were exaggeration, distortion, idealization, might actually be the most realistic thing imaginable. They might be precisely what a pregnant woman sees when she looks down at the body that's growing a new person inside it. If that's true, and we may never know for sure, but if it's true, then these aren't goddesses sculpted by men. They're women documenting their own bodies, their own pregnancies, their own experience of carrying life, from the inside, from their own point of view. The oldest selfies in human history. 30,000, 40,000 years old. A woman looking down at herself, carving what she saw, leaving behind a record that says, "I was here. This was my body. This is what it looked like to be me." And the same impulse showed up from France to Siberia. That's not crude. That's one of the most intimate and human things ever pulled out of the ground. Now let's talk about music, because yeah, they had that too, and it's not what you're imagining. You're probably picturing someone banging two rocks together or thumping a log. Rhythm, sure, fine, primitive percussion. But no, I'm talking about actual instruments, melodic instruments, crafted with precision, capable of playing real music. They made flutes, flutes carved out of the hollow bones of birds, like vultures and swans, and flutes carved from mammoth ivory, which, by the way, is an absolutely insane thing to pull off because ivory is solid, so you'd have to split it lengthwise, hollow out both halves, and then seal them back together airtight. That is master craftsmanship. And these flutes are 40,000 years old. 40,000. Among the oldest musical instruments ever found. And here's the part that should give you chills. These weren't random tubes with holes poked in them. The finger holes were placed deliberately, carefully positioned, carefully spaced. And when modern researchers reconstructed these flutes and played them, they didn't produce random noise. They produced recognizable musical scales. The notes line up into the kind of intervals that sound musical to our ears today, which means somebody 40,000 years ago understood, at least intuitively, the mathematics of music. The relationships between notes that make a melody sound like a melody. They figured out the scale, and they built an instrument precise enough to play it, out of a bird bone, with stone tools, by firelight. Let that land for a second. The same kind of pleasing intervals that show up in songs you listen to today, somebody worked those out 40,000 years ago and carved an instrument to play them. So picture the scene again. The fire's going. The work is done because remember, the work was always done by early afternoon. People are full, relaxed, lying around. And someone lifts a flute carved from the bone of a bird and they play. An actual melody. Drifting up into the dark over a cave or a camp 40,000 years ago. Other people listening. Maybe someone singing along. Maybe a kid falling asleep to it. Music made for no reason other than that it's beautiful and it feels good to make and to hear. That's not survival. That's culture. That's art. That's the soul of a species that had figured out how to live and then turned its attention to how to feel. Now here's a thing I really want to drive home because it ties all of this together. None of this, the art, the music, the burials, the spiritual journeys into the dark, none of it happens if you're spending every waking second fighting to survive. You don't carve an ivory flute when you're starving. You don't crawl half a kilometer underground to paint a wall when every minute counts toward not dying. You don't grind ochre and string beads for the dead when you can barely feed the living. All of this, every single beautiful, mysterious, soul-stirring thing these people made, is only possible because they had time. Surplus. Margin. Hours and hours every single day that weren't claimed by survival, that they got to spend being human in the fullest sense. Making things. Wondering things. Believing things. Loving and grieving and creating. The free time wasn't a luxury on the side. The free time was the foundation that the entire culture was built on. And here's the thing that I keep coming back to, the thing that should genuinely make you stop and think. We tend to assume we're the rich ones. We've got abundance, we've got technology, we've got everything they didn't. And materially, sure. But in the one currency that maybe matters most, actual unscheduled time to just be alive and present and yours, they might have been wealthier than you are. They worked a handful of hours, and then the day belonged to them. You work 8 or 10 or 12 and then collapse into a screen. They lay around a fire making music with their friends. You scroll until you fall asleep. Turns out the people we pity might have, in the ways that count, had it better. And that's a thought worth sitting with. And that brings me to maybe the strangest and most intimate thing of all, the thing that happened every single night, in the dark, that we've completely lost. The way they slept. Because they did not sleep the way you sleep, not even close. And once you understand how they did it, you might start to suspect that the way you're doing it is the weird, broken, modern version, and theirs was the natural one all along. Here's how you sleep, probably. You lie down at night. You pass out for, ideally, 8 hours straight. One solid, uninterrupted block, and you wake up in the morning. One sleep. We treat that as the correct, healthy, normal way to do it. If you wake up at 3 in the morning, you panic a little. Something's wrong. You can't sleep. You toss and turn and stress about it. But here's the thing. That single block sleep might be a modern invention. An artifact of artificial light and clocks and alarms and the industrial world telling us when to be conscious. The older way, the way that shows up across cultures and history, was different. People slept in 2 pieces. You'd go to sleep when it got dark, sleep for a few hours, and then, naturally, on purpose, you'd wake up in the middle of the night, and you'd just be awake for a while. An hour, 2 hours. And this wasn't a problem. It wasn't insomnia. It was a feature. It was a normal, expected, even cherished part of the night. And what did people do during this waking window in the middle of the dark? Everything, honestly. They'd talk. Quiet conversations by the embers of the fire. They'd tend the fire, feed it, keep it alive through the night. They'd tell stories. They'd think. Some traditions hold it was a time for prayer or reflection, a uniquely calm and clear-headed window when the mind was rested but the world was still asleep. And yeah, couples would make love. That quiet middle-of-the-night hour was, by some accounts, exactly when. And then, after a while, you drift back down into your second sleep and sleep until dawn. 2 sleeps, with a peaceful waking island in between. And here's the detail about all this that I find absolutely beautiful and a little bit profound. Think about what this means for the camp as a whole. People going to sleep at slightly different times, waking in the night at slightly different times, drifting in and out. It means that at basically any given hour of the night, somebody was awake. Somebody was up, tending the fire, eyes open, ears open, listening to the darkness. There was never a moment when the whole camp was completely unconscious and defenseless. Always, someone was awake and listening. A natural, rolling, self-organizing night watch built right into the rhythm of how everyone slept. No one assigned it. No one had to volunteer for the graveyard shift. It just happened. Because of the way human sleep naturally flows when you take away the alarm clocks and the artificial light and let it do its own thing. Someone was always awake, listening to the dark while the others slept. There's something so deeply comforting and so deeply human about that. The whole group, breathing through the night together, never fully alone, never fully unguarded. A fire kept alive by rotating hands, voices murmuring softly in the small hours, life quietly continuing even while most of the camp dreamed. That's how your ancestors passed their nights for tens of thousands of years. And we traded it for a single 8-hour block of unconsciousness and a phone alarm screaming us awake. So here's where I want to leave you, at least for now. Everything you thought you knew about these people, scrap it. The grunting, the desperation, the constant terror, the empty-eyed brute scratching at survival. None of it holds up. What was actually there was a people who worked a few hours a day and then had the rest of their time to themselves. A people who ate mostly from patient, skillful gathering and hunted only now and then, and who, when they did hunt, did it by out-enduring animals 3 times their speed under a punishing sun. A people who carried the knowledge of hundreds of plants in their heads with a precision that left no room for error. A people who carved flutes from bird bones and ivory and played real melodies by the fire. A people who sculpted their own bodies into ivory and stone and scattered them across a continent. A people who crawled into the lightless guts of the earth to paint masterpieces no one would ever see, because the painting wasn't for eyes, it was for the spirit. A people who buried their dead curled like sleeping infants, dusted in the red of life, packed for a journey, maybe with flowers laid on top, because to them, death was a door and not an ending. These were not lesser versions of us. These were us. Fully, completely, achingly us. Same minds, same hearts, same hunger for meaning and beauty and connection. They just had something we somehow lost along the way. Time, and the wisdom to know what to do with it. And honestly, the more you look at how they lived, the harder it gets to be sure who the primitive ones really are. Okay, so now I want to dig into something we kind of skated past. And it's one of those things that, once you really chew on it, completely rewires how you picture daily life back then. We talked about how the work was done by early afternoon, right? 4 to 6 hours, and then the day was yours. But I don't think I did justice to what that actually felt like. Because there's a difference between knowing a fact and living inside it. So let me put you inside it. The year is whatever you want it to be, somewhere in that deep window of 40,000 years ago. The sun's barely up. You're not jolted awake by a screaming alarm. There's no buzzing phone, no boss, no calendar reminder pinging at you. You wake up because the light changed, because the fire shifted, because that's just when bodies wake up when you leave them alone. And the day in front of you, there's no schedule on it. There's stuff to do, sure, food to find, water to fetch, a tool that needs mending, but there's no clock chopping your hours into little blocks and selling them off. The day is shapeless and open and yours, and you fill it the way water fills a bowl. Now here's the thing that's wild about that. We think of structure, schedules, deadlines as the marks of an advanced society, and in some ways they are, but they're also a cage. You live inside 1,000 invisible deadlines. Be at work at 9, pick up the kids at 3, respond to that message by end of day, pay that bill by the 1st. Your time is sliced and claimed and spoken for before you even wake up. Their time wasn't. The hunter-gatherer didn't owe their hours to anybody. They worked enough, and then they were free in a way that almost no modern person ever experiences. Not even on vacation, because even your vacation is scheduled, booked, timed, and over by a certain date. And I think that's worth sitting with, because it reframes the whole thing. We didn't just trade leisure for technology, we traded ownership of our own time for it. They owned their days. We rent ours back to ourselves in the scraps that are left after everyone else has taken their cut. Now, let me explain something about how this even worked, because you might be thinking, okay, but surely there were bad seasons, lean times, scarcity. And yeah, there were. But here's where their whole way of living was, honestly, kind of genius. They weren't tied to one place. They moved. They were nomadic, following the food, following the seasons, reading the land like a book they'd memorized cover to cover. When the berries ripened in one valley, they knew. When the herds migrated through a certain pass, they knew. When a particular route was ready to dig, when the fish ran, when the nuts dropped, they knew. Because that knowledge was the inheritance handed down across uncountable generations. So instead of staying in one spot and forcing the land to feed them, which is what farming would eventually do, they followed abundance around. They went to where the food was, at the time it was there. And that's a fundamentally different relationship with the world. A farmer fights the land. Clears it, plows it, plants it, weeds it, defends it, breaks their back trying to bend one patch of earth to their will. A forager dances with the land, reads it, follows it, takes what it offers freely, and moves on before it's exhausted. One is constant labor against nature. The other is a kind of partnership with it. And here's the kicker. The partnership required fewer hours and produced a more varied, often healthier diet. The fight required more hours and, ironically, often produced a worse one. That's not a small thing. When humans eventually settled down and started farming, a lot of people imagined that as the great leap forward, the moment we got comfortable and safe. But here's what the bones actually tell us, and it's grim. Early farmers were, in a lot of measurable ways, worse off than the foragers who came before them. Shorter, more malnourished, more disease, worse teeth, more back-breaking labor for more hours of the day. Because when you bet everything on a couple of crops and then the weather turns, you don't just have a bad week, you have a famine. The forager who knew 300 plants and could move had 1,000 backup plans.
The farmer who planted wheat had wheat, and if the wheat failed, the farmer failed. We'll come back to that, but I want you to hold on to it because it's the thread that ties this whole story together. More control over your food didn't automatically mean more security or more comfort. Sometimes it meant less. But okay, let's get back to the good stuff, the texture of their actual lives, because I really want you to feel how rich it was. Let's talk about the social world. Because one of the things we lose, living the way we live, packed into cities full of strangers, scrolling past 1,000 faces a day that we'll never know, is the kind of deep, total community these people lived inside every single moment. Picture the band, the group you lived with. It was small, usually a few dozen people, maybe 20, 30, give or take. And here's the thing, you knew every single one of them. Not knew of them, knew them. Inside out. You knew their voices in the dark. You knew their moods, their jokes, their wounds, their histories. You'd known most of them your entire life, and they'd known you your entire life. There were no strangers in your daily world. Every face was a face you trusted, or at least understood. You were never anonymous. You were never invisible. You were always completely embedded in a web of people who knew exactly who you were and had your back. Now think about how radically different that is from your life. You can walk through a city of millions and not have a single person know your name. You can go a whole day, a whole week, surrounded by humans and feel utterly alone. Loneliness, the kind of deep, gnawing isolation that millions of people feel today, that was almost structurally impossible for them. You couldn't really be lonely in a band of 30 people who'd known you since birth and would know you until you died. Whatever else was hard about that life, and things were hard, you were never alone in it. You were held, constantly, by a community that had no exit and no off switch. And here's the crazy part. That closeness wasn't always comfortable, and that's actually part of what made it work. You couldn't just ghost someone.
You couldn't block them and move to a new city.
If you had a conflict with someone in your band, you had to deal with it because you were going to be sleeping 10 feet from them tonight and tomorrow and for the rest of your life. So these groups developed incredibly sophisticated ways of keeping the peace, of diffusing tension, of sharing fairly so that resentment didn't build up and tear the group apart. Because the group surviving meant everyone survived, and the group falling apart meant everyone might die. So cooperation wasn't a nice idea, it was survival infrastructure. And this is where you get one of the most beautiful features of these societies, something anthropologists noticed over and over. They were aggressively, almost militantly egalitarian. Sharing wasn't optional, it was the entire ethos. When a hunter brought down a big animal, that meat didn't belong to the hunter. It got distributed across the whole group, sometimes with elaborate rules about who got which cut, specifically designed to make sure the successful hunter couldn't lord it over everyone else. Some groups even had this practice where they deliberately downplay a big kill, mock the hunter a little, tease him, specifically to keep his ego in check, to stop any one person from getting too proud, too dominant, too big for the band. Think about how wise that is. They understood, intuitively, that the moment one person started accumulating more, started building status, started feeling superior, the whole egalitarian balance would tip and the group's cohesion would crack. So they built social tools to prevent it, to keep everyone level, to make sure no one rose too high or sank too low. And it worked, for tens of thousands of years. A way of living together that kept hierarchy from taking root, that kept everyone fed, that kept everyone valued. We're still, today, struggling to figure out how to do that, and they had it baked into the culture by firelight 40,000 years ago. Now, speaking of being held by the group, let's talk about how children grew up in this world, because it's so different from anything you've experienced that it might genuinely shift something in you. The kid in a hunter-gatherer band did not grow up the way you grew up. There was no separate world of childhood walled off from the adults. No playroom, no daycare, no off you go to school, see you at 3. The child was woven into the fabric of the group from day one, present for everything, watching everything, part of everything. A child learned by watching and doing, embedded right in the middle of real life. They watched the adults gather, and they gathered alongside them, fumbling at first, getting better. They watched tools get made, and they tried making them. They listened to the stories every night, absorbing the entire knowledge base of the culture, the maps, the plant lore, the histories, the warnings, the values, all of it, just by living inside the constant flow of it. There was no curriculum. There was no test. There was just the whole of life happening around you, and you soaking it up because you were never excluded from any of it. And here's something gorgeous about it. The kids had enormous freedom. Studies of foraging societies that survived into modern times found that children were given a remarkable amount of autonomy, allowed to play, explore, take small risks, figure things out, without an adult hovering over every move. And they played, constantly, the way kids always have. But their play was often a kind of rehearsal for real life, little hunts, pretend gathering, mock versions of the adult world that quietly trained them in the skills they'd one day need. Play wasn't separate from learning. Play was the learning. The whole thing was seamless. And because the band was small and tight, and everyone knew everyone, a child wasn't raised by just 2 stressed-out parents. A child was raised by the whole group. Aunts, uncles, grandparents, older kids, everyone shared the load. If a mother needed to gather, someone else held the baby. The kid had a dozen caregivers, a dozen role models, a dozen sets of eyes watching out for them. That phrase, "it takes a village," wasn't a slogan back then. It was just literally how it worked. Every child grew up cradled in a whole web of adults who were invested in them.
And researchers who've studied this think it might be one of the reasons foraging kids often grew up remarkably secure, confident, low in anxiety. They were never alone, never unwatched, never unloved, never short on people to learn from. The whole village really did raise them. Now let me hit you with a turn here, because I've been painting a pretty rosy picture, and I want to be honest with you, because the goal here isn't to pretend these people lived in paradise. They didn't. So let me explain the other side, because the real story is more interesting than a fairy tale. Life was, in some hard ways, brutal. Here's a number that'll sober you up. Infant and child mortality was savagely high. A huge fraction of children, in some estimates a quarter or more, didn't survive past the first few years. There were no antibiotics, no vaccines, no surgeons. An infection that you'd shrug off today with a pill could kill you. A broken bone that set wrong could cripple you for life. Childbirth was genuinely dangerous for both mother and baby every single time. And all those plants they knew, the medicine they had, it was real and it was sophisticated, but it could only do so much against the things that kill people. So when I tell you they buried their dead with such tenderness, with the ochre and the fetal position and the beads and maybe the flowers, I want you to understand that they did that a lot. They grieved often. They lost children constantly, and parents, and friends. Death was woven into their lives in a way that's hard for us to even imagine, because we've pushed death to the edges of our world, hidden it away in hospitals and hospices. They lived right up against it. It was a regular visitor at the fire. And maybe that's exactly why their burial rituals were so rich and so loving, because they had so much practice at grief, and because the only thing you can do in the face of that much loss is to find a way to make it mean something. But here's the thing, and this is the turn. This is where it gets genuinely surprising. If you survived childhood, if you made it through that brutal gauntlet of the early years, your life expectancy shot way up. The common idea that everyone back then dropped dead at 30, that's a myth, and it's a myth born from a math trick. When you average in all those infant deaths, the average lifespan looks really low. But that average is misleading. It doesn't mean people were dying of old age at 30. It means a lot of babies died young and dragged the average down. If you made it to adulthood, you had a very real shot at living into your 60s, your 70s, even beyond. There were old people, there were grandparents, there were wrinkled elders sitting by the fire who'd seen 70 winters and knew everything. And those elders, let me tell you, those elders were the single most valuable resource the group had. We're going to sit with this for a second because it's profound. In a world with no books, no writing, no external memory of any kind, where does knowledge live? It lives in the oldest heads. The elder who'd survived a drought 60 years ago was the only person alive who remembered what to do when the next one came. The elder who knew every plant, every trail, every story, every danger, that person was a living library, an irreplaceable archive of survival wisdom. When a young hunter faced something they'd never seen, the elder had probably seen it. When a strange illness struck, the elder might remember a remedy from decades past. The elders were the group's memory, its insurance policy, its accumulated wisdom made flesh. And that's why they were revered. Not pitied, not shoved aside, not warehoused away like we so often do with our old people today. Revered, cherished, listened to. In a forager band, getting old wasn't a tragedy or an embarrassment. It was an achievement, a triumph, and it came with status and respect. Because the longer you'd lived, the more you knew, and the more you knew, the more the whole group needed you. Your value didn't decline with age, it increased. Imagine living in a world where every year you got older, you got more respected, more essential, more central, instead of more invisible. That was their world. And honestly, it makes you wonder which one of us has it backwards. Now, here's a thought experiment that I think really crystallizes the difference between their world and ours. Imagine you took everything you know, every fact in your head, every skill, and imagine that the only way it could survive your death was if you taught it perfectly to the next generation, mouth to ear, by telling stories around a fire. No backup, no hard drive, no book it could be written in. If you forgot it, it was gone forever.
If you failed to pass it on, it died with you, and the whole world got a little dumber, a little less safe. That's the weight every elder carried. That's why storytelling wasn't entertainment, even though it was entertaining. The stories were the technology. The stories were how a culture saved its data. Wrapped inside a tale about a great hunt or a spirit or an ancestor was real information. Where the water is in a drought, what that cloud formation means, which animal to never corner, how to read the sky. They encoded survival knowledge into narrative because narrative is sticky, because a good story you remember forever, while a dry list of facts slips right out of your head. They figured out, intuitively, that the human brain is built to remember stories, and so they turned everything they needed to remember into stories. It's one of the most brilliant pieces of cultural technology ever invented, and they invented it before anyone wrote a single word. And here's the crazy part about that. Some of those stories might be older than you can possibly imagine. There are tales told by certain peoples today that seem to encode geographic events, like coastlines that flooded or volcanoes that erupted, that happened thousands upon thousands of years ago. Stories that may have been passed down, mouth to ear, fire to fire, across hundreds of generations, carrying a memory of the deep past forward through time, like a message in a bottle thrown across the millennia. Think about that. A story you could theoretically still hear today that started as a real event witnessed by a real human being who looked up at the same moon you look up at 10,000 years ago or more and told their children, who told their children, who told their children, all the way down to now. That's not primitive. That's a memory system more durable, in some ways, than anything we've built, because it survived without any technology at all, just human voices refusing to let the past be forgotten. Okay, let me pull us back to the body for a minute, because I want to talk about how physically capable these people were, and it's genuinely humbling. We touched on the persistence hunting, the endurance, the sweating, the outlasting of faster animals. But I want to broaden that out, because the whole package of the human body, the way they actually used it, day in and day out, was on another level compared to what most of us are working with now. These people were, by necessity, in extraordinary physical condition. Not gym condition, not the kind of muscle you build lifting metal in a mirror, but the deep, functional, all-around fitness that comes from a life of constant, varied, real movement. They walked, constantly, miles every single day over rough terrain, carrying loads, climbing, crouching, digging, carrying children, hauling water, dragging game. Their bodies were tools that they used hard all the time, and as a result, they were strong in a way that's actually been measured. Studies of ancient skeletons have found bone density and muscle attachment marks that suggest a level of robustness that would put most modern people to shame, and in some cases would rival or exceed elite modern athletes. The leg bones of ancient foraging women, just regular women going about their lives, show strength comparable to that of competitive runners today. From walking, from living. And they could move in ways we've largely lost. They could squat comfortably, flat-footed, for long stretches, the way most adults in the industrialized world physically can't anymore. They could climb, they could throw with accuracy and power, because throwing well was a survival skill. They had endurance that let them keep going all day in heat that would put a modern person on the ground. Their bodies were the bodies we were designed to have, used the way they were designed to be used,
And the result was a kind of robust, durable, capable physicality that we've traded away for chairs and cars and screens. And here's the thing that gets me. They weren't trying to be fit. There was no concept of exercise. Exercise, the idea of moving your body on purpose for the sake of health, that's a modern invention. And it's a kind of sad one when you think about it, because it exists precisely because we've engineered movement out of our lives so completely that we now have to schedule it back in artificially. They never thought about fitness because their entire lives were a workout, woven seamlessly into the act of just living. The walking was getting somewhere. The lifting was carrying something. The squatting was gathering.
The running was hunting. The strength wasn't a goal. It was a side effect of a life lived in full, constant, purposeful motion. Which, just goes to show how upside down some things have gotten. We've made a world so comfortable, so frictionless, so effortless, that we now have to invent ways to add the effort back in, or our bodies start to fall apart. They had the opposite problem, if you could even call it a problem. Their bodies got everything they needed just by living the day. And their teeth, by the way, here's a little detail. The teeth of pre-agricultural humans were often remarkably good. Strong, well-aligned, low in cavities. Way better than what came after farming flooded everyone's diet with starchy grains. They weren't brushing or flossing. Their diet just didn't rot their teeth the way ours does. The hard, varied, low-sugar food they ate kept their mouths healthy in a way that, again, kind of embarrasses us with all our toothpaste and dentists.
Now let's talk about their food itself for a second, because I keep saying gathering, 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 and I want to give you a real sense of what was actually on the menu, because the variety is staggering and it ties right back into how healthy they were. We tend to eat an incredibly narrow diet today. A handful of crops, wheat, corn, rice, soy, dressed up 1,000 different ways, but fundamentally the same few plants over and over, plus a couple of farmed animals. Most of your calories come from a tiny number of species. Theirs came from hundreds. A forager's diet across a year was wildly diverse. Dozens upon dozens of different plants, each in its season. Roots and tubers dug from the ground. Leafy greens. Berries of every kind. Nuts and seeds packed with fat and energy. Fruits when they ripened. Mushrooms for those who knew which ones wouldn't kill you. Honey when they could find it, which was a treasure, a wild burst of sweetness raided from a bee colony, sometimes at real risk. And then the animal foods, not just the big game meat from the occasional hunt, but small game, birds, eggs, fish where there was water, shellfish along the coasts, insects, grubs, larvae, all of it fair game, all of it nutrition. This insane variety meant they got a spread of nutrients that our narrow, modern diets struggle to match. Vitamins, minerals, fats, proteins, fiber, all coming from 100 different natural sources across the turning of the year. Their food wasn't processed, wasn't refined, wasn't loaded with the sugar and salt and strange additives that fill ours. It was, by any honest measure, an incredibly clean and varied diet, and their bodies showed it. The diseases that plague the modern world, the heart disease, the diabetes, the obesity, the conditions we now know are driven heavily by what and how we eat, were largely absent from their lives. Not because they had better medicine, they didn't, but because they never developed the conditions in the first place. The way they ate simply didn't produce them. And here's a turn that I find genuinely fascinating. We spend billions of dollars today trying to engineer our way back to something like their diet. The whole obsession with eating natural, eating whole foods, eating varied, cutting the sugar, cutting the processed junk, getting more diversity on the plate, all of it is, in a sense, a desperate attempt to claw our way back toward the way humans ate for the overwhelming majority of our existence. We got so far away from it that now we have to study it and reverse engineer it and pay a premium for it. They just ate that way because that's what was there.
because that's what the land gave, because they never left it behind in the first place. Turns out the cutting-edge diet science of today keeps pointing over and over back toward the plate of a person who lived 40,000 years ago. Now I want to zoom out and talk about something bigger, something that frames this entire story, because I think it's easy to hear all this and think, well, that was a long time ago, a brief, weird chapter before real history started. But you've got that exactly backwards, and let me explain why, because this might be the most important thing to understand in this whole story. This way of living, the foraging, the small bands, the few hours of work, the deep community, the rich inner life of art and music and ritual, this wasn't a brief prelude to human history. This was human history. For the vast, overwhelming majority of the time that anatomically modern humans have existed, this is how we lived. Hundreds of thousands of years. If you took the entire span of our species and squeezed it down into a single day, 24 hours, the farming, the cities, the writing, the technology, all of what we call civilization, all of recorded history, would fit into the last few minutes before midnight. The other 23 hours and 50-something minutes? All foragers. All this. This was the main event. This was the human story. The thing we think of as normal life, the cities and jobs and screens, is a tiny, recent, experimental sliver tacked onto the very end. Let that reframe everything for you. Your body, your brain, your instincts, your emotions. They were all forged during those long hundreds of thousands of years of foraging life. You are, biologically, a hunter-gatherer. That's the creature you actually are. Your brain was tuned for a small band of people you know intimately, and we drop it into a city of millions of strangers. Your body was built for constant, varied movement and a diverse natural diet, and we sit it in a chair and feed it processed food. Your nervous system was calibrated for the rhythms of fire and dark and seasons, and we flood it with artificial light and screens and 100 small stresses it was never designed to handle. The mismatch between the creature we are and the world we built is, a lot of researchers think, behind so much of what ails us. The anxiety, the depression, the loneliness, the restlessness. We're Stone Age beings living in a Space Age world, and the gap between the two is where a lot of modern suffering lives. And here's the part that should really land. This isn't about romanticizing the past or wishing we could go back. We can't, and given the child mortality and the dangers, most of us wouldn't really want to. But understanding where we came from, understanding the creature we actually are underneath all the technology, that's powerful. It explains why we crave community so badly. Why we feel so good around a fire, in nature, among people who know us. Why deep sleep and real movement and varied food and genuine connection make us feel alive in a way that scrolling never will. Those cravings aren't random. They're the echoes of 40,000 years of living a certain way, still humming inside you, still pointing back toward the life your body was actually built for. So when you feel that pull, that sense that something about modern life is just slightly off, slightly wrong, slightly hollow, even when you have everything, that's not you being ungrateful or broken. That might just be the forager inside you, the real you, the ancient you, recognizing that the world we built, for all its wonders, is missing some of the things that made us human in the first place. The time, the closeness, the fire, the dark, the stories, the hands always busy making something beautiful. And maybe the smartest thing we can do isn't to go back, but to look at how they lived and quietly ask ourselves which of those lost things we might still find a way to bring forward. Now, I want to circle back to that fire, because I keep mentioning it. The fire, always the fire. And I don't think you fully appreciate yet just how central that one thing was to everything. The fire wasn't just a convenience. The fire was, honestly, one of the most transformative things our ancestors ever got their hands on. And the way they lived their entire lives revolved around it, in ways you've probably never stopped to think about. So let me explain, because this is one of those things that, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Picture this. It's getting dark. The sun's gone down, and the world is closing in around you. And out there, in that darkness, are things that want to eat you. Big cats, hyenas, predators with eyes built for the night that can see you long before you can see them. Without fire, the night belonged to them. You'd be huddled in the dark, blind and vulnerable, prey, but you have fire. And the moment you have fire, the whole equation flips. That flame pushes back the dark. It throws a circle of light and warmth around your group, and inside that circle, you're safe. The predators won't come near it. They're afraid of it, instinctively, the way most animals are. So that little ring of firelight became something almost magical, a bubble of safety carved out of a hostile night. And inside it, you could finally relax. And here's what's wild. That fire didn't just keep you safe and warm and let you cook your food, though it did all of that. And cooking alone was a revolution, because cooking unlocks calories and nutrients that raw food keeps locked away, basically pre-digesting it for you, letting you feed a bigger, hungrier, more expensive brain. But beyond all of that, the fire did something to the human mind. It extended the day. Before fire, when the sun went down, that was it. You were done. Nothing to do but sleep. But fire gave us hours. Hours of light and warmth at the end of the day, after the work was done, when there was nothing urgent to do. And those hours, the firelight hours, those became something special. Researchers who studied foraging peoples noticed this. During the day, the conversation around the camp was practical, economic. Who's doing what? Where's the food? What needs fixing? Who's annoyed at who? The logistics of survival. But at night, around the fire, the conversation changed. It shifted. It became something else entirely. At night, by the flame, people told stories. They talked about the spirit world. They talked about people who weren't there, distant relatives, ancestors, the dead. They talked about the imagination, the unseen, the meaning of things. The firelight loosened something in the human mind and let it wander into the realms that daytime, with all its practical demands, never had room for. Think about what that means. The fire didn't just keep the body alive. The fire built the human soul. It created the time and the space and the mood for storytelling, for myth, for religion, for art, for everything that lives in the imagination rather than the stomach. So much of what makes us human, our stories, our gods, our sense of wonder, our connection to the past and to each other, a huge amount of it was forged in those long, warm, flickering hours around a fire after dark, when the work was done and the mind was finally free to roam. The fire was the first hearth, the first theater, the first temple, the first classroom. All of it, all rolled into one dancing flame. We are, in a very real sense, children of the fire. And every time you feel that deep, irrational pull to just sit and stare into a campfire, mesmerized, calm, content, that's not random. That's tens of thousands of years of your ancestors finding safety and warmth and meaning in exactly that flame, hardwired into you, still glowing. Now, speaking of things hardwired into you, let's talk about something that I think is one of the most beautiful and overlooked aspects of this whole world, and that's their relationship with the land itself. Because to us, land is, well, real estate. It's property. It's something you own, something you buy, something with a price and a fence and a deed. But to them, the land wasn't a thing you owned. It was a thing you belonged to. And that flip in perspective is so profound that I want to spend some real time on it, because it might be one of the things we lost that we miss the most without even knowing it. These people knew their territory the way you know your own home, only deeper, because their lives depended on it.
They didn't have maps drawn on paper. The map lived in their heads, and it was unbelievably detailed.
They knew every hill, every valley, every stream, every patch of good plants, every game trail, every water source, every dangerous spot, every place where this happened or that happened. The whole landscape was saturated with knowledge and memory and meaning. And it wasn't just practical knowledge where the food and water are. It was a kind of sacred geography, a living map where the physical land and the spiritual world were woven together so tightly you couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. Let me explain what I mean, because this is genuinely mind-bending. In many of these cultures, the features of the landscape weren't just rocks and hills. They were stories. They were ancestors. That mountain over there, that wasn't just a mountain. It was the place where a great being lay down and turned to stone in the time of creation. That waterhole, that was made when an ancestral creature struck the earth. That rock formation, that's where a hero fought a monster. Every notable feature of the land had a story attached to it, and those stories were a map and a history and a religion and a moral code all at once. As you walked the land, you walked through a story.
The geography itself was a kind of text you read with your feet, and every step reminded you of who you were, where you came from, and how to live. Some peoples develop this into something so sophisticated, it's hard to even wrap your head around. There are traditions where the songs themselves are maps, where you could navigate vast distances across a landscape you'd never personally seen just by knowing the song, because the song describes the features of the land in the order you'd encounter them, encoding the whole route into a melody you could sing your way across. The land and the story and the song, all one thing, all the same thing. A navigation system and a spiritual practice and a cultural memory fused into a single, seamless whole. You don't get more brilliant than that. We invented satellites to do what they did with a song. And here's the part that should make you stop. Because the land was sacred, because it was alive with meaning and ancestors and story, they treated it completely differently than we treat it. You don't strip mine your ancestor. You don't pave over a god. You don't clear-cut a place that's woven into the very fabric of who you are.
There was a built-in restraint, a reciprocity, a sense that you took only what you needed and gave respect back to the land that gave you life. Now, I want to be careful here, because there's a tempting myth that ancient people were all perfect, gentle stewards who never harmed the environment. And the truth is more complicated. They sometimes hunted things to extinction. They shaped landscapes more than we used to think. They weren't flawless. But the fundamental relationship, the basic orientation toward the land, was one of belonging rather than ownership, of partnership rather than conquest. And that difference shaped everything about how they lived in the world. They saw themselves as part of the web of life, one strand among many, not as the masters of it standing outside it. And honestly, given where our sense of mastery has gotten us, that's a perspective worth taking seriously. Okay, let me shift gears and take you somewhere a little stranger, because I've been talking about the practical and the spiritual, but I haven't really dug into just how deep and weird and rich their inner spiritual world probably was. And I want to, because I think we massively underestimate it. We picture, maybe, some simple nature worship, a bit of superstition, sun good, thunder scary, that kind of thing. But the evidence suggests their spiritual life was vast, complex, and layered, every bit as sophisticated as any religion that came after. Let me take you back into that cave for a second, deeper than before. Because in some of those painted caves, alongside the horses and the bison and the herds, there's something else, something stranger. There are figures that aren't quite human and aren't quite animal. A body that's part man, part beast. A human shape with the head of a stag, or the features of a lion, or the legs of a person and the upper body of something wild. These are sometimes called therianthropes, the blending of human and animal into one being. And they show up across these ancient art sites, and nobody can say for certain what they meant, but they are absolutely electric with significance.
What were they? The leading idea connects to something called shamanism, and let me explain, because this is where it gets genuinely fascinating. In many traditional societies, there were special people, call them shamans, call them spirit walkers, call them whatever, individuals who were believed to be able to cross over, to leave their bodies, in a sense, and travel into the spirit world, to commune with the dead, with the spirits of animals, with the forces that govern the hunt and the weather and life and death. And they do this through trance, through rhythm, through dance, through sometimes pushing the body and mind to the edge until ordinary reality dissolved and something else came through. And those half-human, half-animal figures on the cave walls might be exactly that, depictions of the shaman in transformation, in the moment of becoming part animal, of merging with the spirit of the beast, of crossing the line between the human world and the other one. The deep, dark cave itself, that crawl into the lightless belly of the earth we talked about, that might have been the journey into the spirit world made physical. You go down into the dark, into the underworld, into the place between places, and there, in that altered, sensory-deprived, flame-flickering state, the boundary between worlds gets thin, and you paint what you see on the other side. The art wasn't a picture of the world. It might have been a record of a journey out of it. Now here's the crazy part, and this is the thing that really gets me. Think about what that requires. It requires these people to have had a fully developed concept of an unseen world, a spirit realm, a layer of reality beyond the physical. It requires them to have developed techniques, deliberate, refined techniques, for altering consciousness and reaching that realm. It requires a whole cosmology, a map of reality that included the seen and the unseen, the living and the dead, the human and the more than human, all interconnected. That's not simple. That's not crude. That's a rich, complex, fully realized spiritual system. The kind of thing that took later religions thousands of years and whole libraries of scripture to articulate. And these people were living it, embodying it, painting it onto stone in the dark, 40,000 years ago. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Just how much was going on inside their heads that we'll never be able to recover. Because here's the heartbreaking thing about studying these people. So much of what mattered most to them left no trace. The stories they told, gone, unless they survived in some thread of oral tradition. The songs they sang, gone, except for the bones of the flutes. The beliefs, the gods, the myths, the jokes, the names they called each other, the lullabies they sang to their babies, the words a mother said to a dying child. All of it, gone, vanished into time, leaving only the hard, durable scraps behind. The stone tools, the bones, the cave paintings, the buried beads. We're piecing together the richest, most vivid inner lives from a handful of physical leftovers, like trying to reconstruct an entire person from a single fingerprint. What we've found is already staggering, and it's only a sliver, the tiniest fraction of what was actually there. The real wealth of their world, the conversations and the beliefs and the love and the meaning, has mostly slipped away forever. And that should fill you with a kind of awe and a kind of grief at the sheer depth of human experience that's been lost to the silence of deep time. Now, let me bring us back from the spirit world to something very concrete and very clever, because I want to talk about their technology. And I know, you hear Stone Age and you think crude, primitive, a sharp rock and not much else. But that's another one of those lazy assumptions that falls apart the second you actually look closely. Their technology was sophisticated, it was refined, it was the product of immense skill and accumulated knowledge, and some of it would be genuinely hard for you to replicate today, even with instructions. Let's start with the stone tools, because that's the thing that gives the whole era its name, the Stone Age, like that's all there was. Making a good stone tool is not bashing two rocks together. It's a craft. It's called knapping, and it's incredibly difficult. You take a piece of stone, usually flint or a similar fine-grained rock, and you strike it at exactly the right angle, with exactly the right force, in exactly the right spot, to flake off a piece in exactly the shape you want. Get it wrong, wrong angle, wrong force, and the whole thing shatters uselessly. Or the flake breaks the wrong way, and you've wasted your material. The good knappers, the skilled ones, could read a piece of stone, see the tool waiting inside it, and patiently, precisely, flake it into existence, blade by blade, edge by edge. The finest stone blades these people made were sharper than surgical steel. I'm not exaggerating, that's a real thing. Certain obsidian blades have an edge finer than a modern scalpel, sharp at a level steel literally cannot achieve because of how the stone fractures at the molecular level. People have actually used knapped obsidian for surgery, Stone Age sharpness, outperforming modern metal. And it gets better, because they didn't just make tools, they made tools to make tools, and tools to make those. They had whole sequences, multi-step manufacturing processes. They figured out how to fit a sharp stone point onto a wooden shaft to make a spear, which is a bigger deal than it sounds, because hafting, attaching a stone head securely to a handle, requires you to make glue. And making glue from scratch, in the wild, is shockingly complicated. Some of them made adhesive from birch bark, and to do that, you have to heat the bark in a very specific, controlled, low-oxygen way to render out the tar, a process that requires real chemical know-how, careful temperature control, an understanding of a transformation you can't even see happening. That's chemistry. Prehistoric chemistry, performed without any of the theory we have, just hard-won knowledge of exactly what to do, passed down and perfected over generations. And then there's the throwing technology, which is just beautiful. We talked about how throwing well was a survival skill, but they didn't stop at just throwing a spear with their arm. They invented a device, the spear thrower, a length of wood or bone with a hook at the end that cradles the butt of a spear. And what it does is extend your arm, basically, mechanically. It acts as a lever, multiplying the power and speed of your throw dramatically. With one of these, a spear flies faster, farther, and hits harder than anything you could throw bare-armed. It's a velocity amplifier. It let a human being, with a flick of the wrist, hurl a deadly projectile with enough force to bring down big game from a safer distance. That's not a caveman with a pointy stick. That's an engineer who understood leverage and ballistics on an intuitive level and built a machine to exploit it. And they made clothing, real, fitted, sewn clothing, which required another whole suite of technology. They invented the needle. Tiny, delicate needles carved from bone, with an eye drilled through one end, fine enough to sew with. Think about how precise that is, drilling a hole through a sliver of bone narrow enough to thread. With that needle and sinew for thread, they could sew animal hides into tailored, layered clothing that actually fit the body and sealed out the cold. And that little needle is what let humans survive the Ice Age. It let people push north into brutal, frozen environments that would have killed a naked ape in hours. The conquest of the cold world, the spread of humanity into places no warm-blooded ape had any business living, was made possible by a bone needle and the knowledge of how to use it. One tiny tool and a whole frozen half of the planet opened up to us. So when you add it all up, the knapping, the chemistry of the glue, the leverage of the spear thrower, the precision of the needle, the engineering of the clothing, you're not looking at primitives. You're looking at master technologists working in the materials they had, stone and bone and wood and hide, with a depth of skill and ingenuity that, frankly, most of us couldn't match if you dropped us into the wild and gave us a year. Could you make fire without a lighter? Could you knap a blade? Could you render tar from bark and haft a spearhead and bring down dinner with it? Almost none of us could. They all could. Every single competent adult carried a whole toolkit of skills in their hands and their heads that would let them not just survive, but thrive in a world that would kill the modern person stone dead in a week. Turns out the primitive ones, by that measure, might be us. Now let me sit with that idea for a minute. because I think it's worth being honest about. We are, individually, astonishingly helpless compared to them. Yeah, our civilization is powerful. Collectively, we've split the atom and walked on the moon. But you, personally, stripped of your tools and your supply chains and your gadgets, dropped into the wilderness, how long would you last? Be honest. Most of us wouldn't make it a week. We don't know which plants to eat, we can't make fire reliably, we can't build shelter, we can't hunt, we can't navigate, we can't doctor a wound. We've outsourced all of it. Every survival skill that every human being possessed for hundreds of thousands of years, we've handed off to systems and specialists and machines. And as individuals, we've become, in the most fundamental sense, less capable than any forager who ever lived. They were generalists, each person a whole self-contained survival kit. We're hyper-specialists, each person able to do one tiny sliver of one thing and utterly dependent on millions of strangers for everything else. And I'm not saying that's bad, exactly. That specialization is what built everything. But it's worth knowing the trade we made, because it's a real one. We gained collective power and individual helplessness. They had the opposite, modest collective power. But every individual was a sovereign, capable, self-reliant being who could look at a patch of wilderness and see not a hostile void, but a home, a pantry, a pharmacy, a hardware store, a cathedral. They read the world fluently in a language we've completely forgotten. And there's something almost vertiginous about that, realizing that the people we've been taught to look down on could do, effortlessly, 1,000 things that would utterly defeat us. It really does make you wonder who's primitive and who's just differently dependent. Let me bring it back around to the texture of a single life, because I think we've been zoomed way out and I want to get intimate again. I want you to imagine a single person living a full life in this world from beginning to end so you can feel the shape of it. Picture being born into that small band, into a dozen waiting hands, your mother and her sisters and the older women catching you, cleaning you, wrapping you in soft hide. You grow up never alone, always carried, always near a body, sleeping in a warm tangle of family. You learn by watching. You play your way into competence. You fail and fumble and slowly master the skills of your people, the plants, the trails, the tools, the stories. You come of age and you take your place in the band, a full member, a gatherer or a hunter or both, contributing, valued, woven in. You love. You pair off with someone or you don't, and either way you're held by the group. You have children and you lose some of them, and you grieve them with ochre and beads and curl their small bodies like sleeping babies, and you carry that grief for the rest of your days. You grow older, your knowledge deepens. The young ones start coming to you for answers, and you become, slowly, an elder, a keeper of the memory, a living library that the whole band leans on. And then, one day, you die, surrounded by the people who've known you your whole life, and they bury you with care, with the red of life dusted over you, with the things you'll need for the journey, and they tell your stories around the fire. And as long as they remember you, in a sense, you're not entirely gone. That was a human life, a whole, complete, meaningful human life, lived 40,000 years ago, and from the inside, it would have felt every bit as full and real and important as yours feels to you. They weren't a rehearsal for us. They were the thing itself, whole people living whole lives in a world we can barely imagine, and yet, in every way that matters, exactly like us. Now, I want to come back to something we touched on early and never fully unpacked, because it's been nagging at me, and I bet it's been nagging at you too. We talked about how they spent only 4 to 6 hours a day on survival, and how that left them with this enormous surplus of free time. But here's the question that really matters, the question that I think most people never even think to ask. What did they actually do with all that time? Because free time isn't automatically a good thing, right? You can have all the free time in the world and be miserable, bored out of your skull, restless. So let me explain how they filled those hours, because it's the answer to whether they were actually rich or just idle. And the answer is, they filled it with each other. That's the thing.
That's the whole thing. The bulk of that free time, the hours and hours every day after the food was secured, went into pure, unhurried human connection. Sitting together, talking, endless talking, grooming each other, picking through hair, a deeply social act that bonds people the same way it bonds our primate cousins. Telling stories again and again, the favorites worn smooth with repetition like river stones. Playing games, joking, teasing, laughing, just being together in the most unstructured, unhurried, present way imaginable, with nowhere else to be and nothing pulling their attention away, because there was no away, no elsewhere, no screen, no notification, no second life happening on a device in their hand. There was just this moment, these people, this fire, this conversation. Total presence. The thing we now pay therapists and meditation apps to help us recover the faintest taste of, they swam in constantly, by default, because they had no other option. And here's the crazy part. That deep, unhurried, face-to-face connection might be the single thing the human animal needs most to be happy. And it's the exact thing our modern world is quietly starving us of. Think about it. You can be surrounded by people and feel alone. You can have hundreds of contacts in your phone and no one to call when things go bad. You can spend an evening with friends and have everyone, including you, half checked out, glancing at screens, present in body but scattered in mind. We've gotten incredibly good at staying in touch and incredibly bad at actually touching. The connection's gone wide and thin. Theirs was narrow and deep. A handful of people known completely, fully, with total attention. And every bit of research we have on human happiness keeps pointing at the same answer, that it's not money, not stuff, not achievement, but the quality of your close relationships that determines whether you flourish. They had that quality in abundance. We're often starving in the middle of plenty. So when we ask, were they actually rich? Here's where I land. By the measure of stuff, no, obviously not. They owned almost nothing, a few tools, some clothes, what you could carry. But by the measure of time, free, owned, unscheduled time, they were wealthy beyond anything most of us will ever know. And by the measure of connection, of being truly known and held and never alone, they were rich in a way that a frightening number of people today, surrounded by every comfort, are desperately, achingly poor. They had less, and in the ways that the science says matter most for a human being to thrive, they may well have had more. Turns out the richest people in history might have been the ones with the fewest possessions and the most time for each other. And here's a detail about that owning almost nothing thing that I find genuinely freeing to think about. They were nomadic, remember? They moved. And when you have to carry everything you own on your back, walking, season after season, you develop a very particular relationship with stuff. You don't accumulate. You can't. Every object you own is a thing you have to pick up and carry, so every object has to earn its place. Is this worth the wait? Is this worth carrying for miles? If not, you don't keep it. So they kept only what mattered, only what was useful or beautiful or meaningful enough to be worth hauling across the landscape. Their lives were, by necessity, radically uncluttered. Now contrast that with us. We accumulate relentlessly. We fill our homes, then we rent storage units to hold the overflow of stuff we don't even use. We buy and buy and buy, chasing some feeling that the next purchase will finally deliver, and it never does, so we buy again. We're drowning in possessions, and a whole modern movement, this whole minimalism thing, has sprung up to help people dig themselves out from under the weight of their own belongings, to deliberately get rid of things, to find peace in owning less. And that movement is, in a sense, trying to manufacture the exact condition the nomadic forager lived in naturally. The radical simplicity,
the freedom of not being owned by your own possessions. They never had to declutter because they never cluttered in the first place. They understood, in their bodies, something we're only now rediscovering, that everything you own owns a little piece of you back. And the lighter you travel, the freer you are. That's not a slogan to them. That was just Tuesday. Okay, I want to take you to one more scene before we start bringing this in for a landing, because I've saved one of the most evocative ones for near the end. I want you to really be there for this one. Close your eyes. Well, don't. You're watching this. But you know what I mean. It's deep night. The fires burn down to a bed of glowing embers, pulsing orange in the dark, throwing just enough light to see the shapes of sleeping bodies all around you. We talked about how they slept in two pieces, waking in the middle of the night, and here you are, in that waking window, that quiet island between the two sleeps. The whole camp is breathing around you in the dark, the soft sounds of people you've known your entire life, asleep, safe, close, and you're awake, and somewhere nearby someone else is awake too, because someone always is, and the two of you sit by the embers and you talk, low and quiet, in the kind of honest, unguarded way that only happens in the deep middle of the night when the rest of the world is asleep. Maybe you talk about a dream, maybe about someone who died, maybe about nothing, just the comfortable murmur of two people keeping each other company in the dark. And above you, when you look up, is something almost none of us have ever truly seen. The sky, the real sky. Not the dim, washed-out, light-polluted smear of a few faint stars that's all most of us ever get now. The full, blazing, overwhelming sky of a world with no electric light anywhere on it. The Milky Way splashed across the dark like spilled light. Thousands upon thousands of stars, so many and so bright they cast shadows. A depth and a brilliance to the night sky that would stop you dead if you saw it. That would make you feel impossibly small and impossibly part of something vast all at once. That was their ceiling, every single night. That was just the sky, the ordinary nightly sky, for every human being who ever lived until shockingly recently. And you have to wonder what that did to them, to live under that, night after night, your whole life. To have that immensity overhead every time you looked up, that constant, glittering reminder of how big and strange and beautiful the cosmos is. The stars were their calendar, their clock, their compass, their map. They knew them intimately, named them, wove them into stories, tracked the seasons by their slow wheeling across the sky. The heavens weren't a distant abstraction you learn about in school. They were a living presence, right there, every night, woven into the fabric of life. And I genuinely think we've lost something profound by lighting up our world so brightly that we've erased the stars. We've blotted out the single most awe-inspiring sight available to a human being, and most people now go their entire lives without once seeing the sky the way every one of their ancestors saw it every single night. That's a strange kind of poverty, isn't it? To be so rich in light that we've made ourselves blind to the stars. So let's start pulling all of this together, because I think a real picture has emerged here, and it's not the one you walked in with. Let me lay it all out one more time so it really lands. The people who lived 40,000 years ago were not the grunting, desperate, miserable savages of the cartoon. They worked a handful of hours a day and owned the rest of their time completely, free of the schedules and deadlines that fence in your every hour. They ate well, a varied, clean, natural diet of hundreds of different foods, mostly gathered with skill and patience, supplemented by the occasional triumph of a hunt pulled off through sheer endurance and cunning. They were strong, fit, capable, their bodies used the way bodies were built to be used, free of so many of the diseases that plague us. They carried encyclopedias of knowledge in their heads, hundreds of plants, the whole landscape, the stories of their people, all of it held in living memory and passed mouth to ear across the generations. They were master technologists, knapping blades sharper than steel, brewing glue, engineering spear throwers, sewing fitted clothing with bone needles that let them conquer the frozen world. They lived in tight, warm, egalitarian communities where no one was a stranger and no one was alone, where children were raised by the whole village and elders were revered as living treasures. They made art so beautiful it still stops us in our tracks, and they hid the best of it deep in the dark earth for reasons that can only be called spiritual. They carved flutes and played real music by the fire. They sculpted their own bodies into ivory. They believed in an unseen world and developed sophisticated ways of reaching it. They buried their dead with tenderness and ceremony, refusing to accept that death was nothing, treating it instead as a door. They read the land as sacred, belonged to it rather than owned it, traveled light, slept under a blazing canopy of stars, woke in the deep night to talk and tend the fire and keep watch, and filled their abundant free time with the one thing that science now tells us matters most: deep, present, unhurried connection with the people they loved. That's not a lesser version of humanity. That's humanity, full stop. That's us, the real us, the us we were for the overwhelming majority of our existence, before the recent, strange, dazzling, and in some ways impoverishing experiment of civilization. And here's the thing I most want you to take away from all of this. I'm not telling you this so you'll romanticize the past, or feel guilty about your phone, or run off into the woods. The past had real horrors, the child mortality, the dangers, the deaths we'd find unbearable. Nobody's pretending it was paradise. I'm telling you this because understanding who we actually are, underneath all the technology, is one of the most clarifying things you can possibly do. Because once you see it, once you really see that you are, at your core, a creature built for a small band, for constant movement, for varied natural food, for deep face-to-face connection, for fire and dark and stars and stories, then so much about modern life suddenly makes sense. The restlessness you feel even when everything's fine, the loneliness that creeps in even in a crowd, the way a campfire calms you, the way nature heals you, the way a long, unhurried evening with people you love feels more nourishing than any amount of scrolling. Those aren't quirks. Those are your ancient self, the forager who's still in there, still running the show underneath, recognizing what it actually needs and quietly, persistently pointing you toward it. And that's the real gift of looking back this far. Not nostalgia, direction. Because you can't go back, and you wouldn't want to, but you can take what they understood and carry the best of it forward. You can guard your time more fiercely, knowing how precious unscheduled hours really are. You can own less and travel lighter, knowing that every possession asks for a piece of you in return. You can put down the screen and give the people in front of you your whole, undivided attention, knowing that deep connection is the thing your soul is actually starving for. You can find a fire to sit by, find a patch of dark sky to look up into, find your own small band of people and hold on to them. You can move your body the way it was built to move. You can let yourself sleep the way your ancestors slept, without panicking when you wake in the night. None of that requires going backward. It just requires remembering what we are. Because underneath the cars and the screens and the buildings and the noise, you are still that creature. You're still the one who walked the long marathon under the burning sun. You're still the one who knew 300 plants by heart. You're still the one who crawled into the dark to paint, who played the bone flute by the fire, who buried the dead in red ochre and refused to call it nothing, who looked up at that blazing sky and felt small and connected and alive all at once. That person is not gone. That person is you, just wrapped in 40,000 years of progress that gave us so much and quietly took a few precious things away. And maybe the smartest thing any of us can do is to notice which things and reach back just a little and take them home. That's where I'm going to leave you, sitting by the embers, looking up at a sky most of us have forgotten how to see. a little more aware of who you actually are underneath it all. These ancient people weren't a footnote before the real story started. They were the story. They were the long, deep, rich, beating heart of what it means to be human. And we are their children, every single one of us, carrying them forward whether we know it or not. So the next time someone calls them primitive, you'll know better. You'll know that in the ways that count, in time, in connection, in skill, in meaning, in their relationship with the world and each other, they might just have had it figured out better than we do. And honestly, that's a thought worth carrying with you out into your own loud, bright, busy world. Maybe it'll change how you spend an evening. Maybe it'll change how you spend a life.
Thanks for hanging out with me on the couch for this one. Go look up at the stars tonight if you can find any, and I'll catch you in the next one.